Can you say hard hats, folks? Hard hats, lunch pail, steel toe boots?
Anything short of a championship this year is a failure.
Look at this boomer right here.
You've just got so much talent here.
Somebody said we need to apologize for Jalen.
Can I close it, John? What are we apologizing for? What did we say? What did we do?
What's going on? John Zanis, Bobby Manning. Bobby's down at the Garden. Celtics pull one out, beat the Brooklyn Nets 108-104 at the Garden, improved to 8-2. This game was in doubt a lot of the way, Bobby. Pesky always sounds insulting or condescending when you refer to a team, but the Nets kept hanging around. Celtics definitely didn't have a good shooting night. Probably not their best night defensively, even though the point total was relatively low. They got murdered on the glass, a little bit of standing around there, and then some funky decisions, particularly to start the game, which they quickly got away from. And again, I will applaud Joe. One of the things I think people are going to go in on Joe for is what the hell is he starting Tillman for? But I will applaud Joe for trying different things and also recognizing right away that it wasn't working out, which is exactly what he did regarding Tillman. But that messed the Celtics up. Their rotations were all out of whack with Cornette out. So it was kind of a funky game. So a pretty good win for them to get here, on a night where, again, it wasn't really going for them. The three-pointer, sixth straight game where they really can't find it from three, and they pulled this one out. So your primary takeaway here, Bobby, is?
Yeah, they looked tired, or there's malaise setting in or something, right? Because it's another game where loose balls, offensive rebounds hurt them. They were down in the shot total throughout. First game all year, I felt like they just launched threes, bad looks, force many, just wanted to get that total early up, just wanted to pray that one could go down. Yeah, and late, at the 2-12 fourth quarter there.
At the fourth quarter was brutal too, but yeah.
You had the crowd getting into it, just praying one would finally go down. And then Hauser finally got one in the corner there. So you're trying different lineups. You're trying to figure out different ways to score. There were definitely some possessions in the game that I liked, how they got inside. I thought Holiday had a solid game, and Tatum, when he got aggressive out on the break or slipped off of a screen and got a good mid-range look, those were some solid plays for him. So they figured it out in this one, and they pulled out a win. Some things that concern you certainly here, and the Tillman play continues to be a significant point that they just are beyond trying to figure out, it looks like.
I think you have to start there. And so that's the thing. Is it weird to start with Tillman in a game where he didn't factor into it? I don't think entirely, because I think that's one of the things people are looking at. Because, again, you win, you lose.
You're down to two centers and one can't play.
Yeah. You win, you lose in the long run. It doesn't really matter with this team because, again, you're without Brown, you're without Porzingis, and everybody knows when all is said and done and you get where you need to be at the end of the year, this team's fully healthy. There's really not concern, certainly not with players like 9 and 10 on your bench. And especially if you now feel good about Keita when Luke is healthy and Porzingis is healthy, Tillman's not really an issue. But right now at this moment, it's a bit of an issue and it's a bit of a disappointment because, look, this is what Joe did. Joe decided to start Xavier Tillman tonight. It's a bit of a head scratcher. Before we get into the whole thing, what was it that you thought made him the logical start tonight instead of Keita, who'd been playing so well? And again, look at the numbers on the screen: 0 points, 0 for 3 field goals, 0 for 3 from 3. Again, teams are going to let him shoot that 3 with good reason. Literally no stats, but the big number is here, -14 in the 5 minutes that he played. And that was it. He started. Joe pulled the plug, put him on ice the rest of the game. What was it about this game, this matchup, that he thought Tillman was the right guy to go to, especially after the games that Kate has had?
I don't think he was. I don't think there was much logic behind it. Keita played so well those last 2 games prior to this. You would think you would roll with what worked. But I think with Tillman taking a back seat, through Cornet and Cater's run there, and Cornet out tonight, I think they want to give him a nod. I think they want to see what he looked like next to Horford. It's that continuous experimenting you're talking about, John, there. I don't think there was a matchup or anything game plan wise that pulled him into action here. I think they just want to see it. They saw it. They didn't like it. And the fact that he doesn't even get another look there, I think speaks volumes either to how they feel about his fit out there, how they play offensively when he's in the mix, or just how they feel he's playing overall. And it can't be good. They can't feel good about how he's positioning himself out there, how he's fitting in alongside other teammates, and just overall the effort to start the year from him. And I don't think it's a health/injury thing. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he was feeling pretty good the last time I talked to him. But he certainly hasn't looked good. It's a little stunning because he had a solid preseason, I thought he looked more in sync with the offense. I thought
We're
he
going
moved
to pop
better,
in and listen to Joe real quick.
Definitely disappointing.
We're going to listen to some Joe here. If I can get the right configuration. Always throws me. We got volume, guys? No volume from Joe. Okay, so we'll get back to it. Guys, whoever's in there, let me know if you have it. I'm not hearing anything from Joe Mazzulla. He's at the podium. If not, we'll play it back and run it lately. Run it back later. I am curious his rationale for starting Tillman, but we'll definitely hear from that as well. Let me peek in again. Can we hear him? Let me see here.
Nope.
No, Joe. Okay. Technical difficulties down at the Garden. We'll get some of Joe a little bit later. But yeah, the Tillman thing again.
Joe looked pissed, John, during the game many times.
Yeah. I said it early, Bobby. I wasn't sure if my eyes were deceiving me, but like I didn't he looked as slower to start this year. Even worse than I remember. And I thought some people were saying that they thought he looked like he was moving better and, coming off the surgery. And again, maybe there's still a ramp up off of whatever procedure he had on his knee to get him going. But I mean, it doesn't look like he's moving well at all. He can't get off the ground, period. So he's not really doing you much justice on the glass. When you're playing him double big in a lineup with Horford, Horford's not eating up rebounds either. I'm not sure of the benefit
the
there.
Rebound is the biggest issue.
The rebound is brutal. So I don't know what you're gaining with Tillman because he's not playing like a big. He's just playing like a stretch four that can't shoot and can't really rebound. Like he's just basically bad Al Horford. You know what I mean? Is like
if he gets 30
looks like we got
if he doesn't do all the other stuff that are more important, most important to winning. And when he does that, we're a different team, and that goes for him, that goes for Jalen, that goes for all our guys. But so he made a decision, in the middle of the game that he was going to impact both ends, and when he does that, we're a different team. So he did a great job of that.
Peyton, I don't know if he's taking any maybe different shots he's taken in the past, but his consistency and his presence in the interior seems to be at a different level now. What are you seeing as far as his almost like aggressiveness and like conviction and going for those little windows and shooting through?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to do it. I mean, he's it's funny to say this, but he's actually a really good 3-level scorer. I mean, he could shoot threes, he can shoot pull-up twos, and he could create just enough space to get layups off, as you saw tonight. So he's a 3-level scorer. But it's all the stuff. His ball pressure changes the game for us. So he's just a really good, well-rounded basketball player. Competitive, nasty.
Joe, Cam Thomas was making some tough shots tonight. The whole Nets team was making some tough shots, especially in that first quarter. And then combined with what John said about, Sam Hauser maybe not making some of the shots he normally does, some of the other guys not making some of the shots he normally does. How tough is it mentally to stick to the game plan? And is there ever a point in the game where you consider changing it up because they're making something that's not a part of the math?
No, it's not that tough. You got to live by principle, not by feeling.
I like that, Joe.
Jaron, then Sam.
Joe, when they're playing, it seemed like they were getting the breaks. They were getting the 50-50 balls.
Yeah.
You guys were missing open threes. They were coming back and scoring. Like, how do you kind of change the mental aspect? You guys played harder than they did the fourth quarter and overtime, and they played harder than you did the first three. How do you in game change and become the harder playing team?
He's not going to like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the guys make a decision to say they're going to outplay us. I think it's just having an understanding. Sometimes you just have to give the perspective to the guys. Sometimes we're playing well and things just aren't going the way we need them to go. I mean, the other team has a great coach and great players as well, and but it can wear on you. I thought in the Golden State game, our defense kept us in it in the first half when things weren't going well for us on the offensive end. Tonight, it was a little bit of both, but I just thought we just made enough plays to kind of chip away at it. And I think that's a testament to the team, because I think you have to find ways to win ugly. And that's just kind of how it is over the course of a long year. I also told the guys, it's funny, and it's not an excuse at all, but it's perspective. One of the reasons why we were really good last year is because these are the type of games that you win. When you're down 3 rotation players, you have to find ways to win. And no one cares that we have guys out. It just doesn't matter. And everyone in the locker room has to know that. We have an expectation to win regardless of who's on the floor. So you got to, shit's not going your way. You just got to figure it out. And so I think I like that mentality of them. We had about 18 of those last year, and this was one tonight where, we just have to figure it out from everybody. And I think that's important. It's just having a perspective of knowing when it's not going your way and kind of changing that as fast as you can.
Joe, early in the fourth quarter, key stretch of the game, Drew's out there to kind of lead the way with the guys while Tatum and Derek get a little bit of a rest. Assists or scores the first couple of buckets of the quarter, and he kind of carries that momentum over to have a very strong close to the game. What does that say about him as a leader and the poise that he's able to play with, especially with his role changing all the time?
Yeah, he's just a Swiss Army knife. I mean, he doesn't really care what his sub pattern is. What he just doesn't care. He just plays hard. Doesn't allow things to impact his effort. And so, but you're right. I saw. I thought. The middle of the first quarter and the second, he made some physical plays that kind of got us back into it and allowed us to kind of be in that space. And so, he just has an ability to impact the game in different ways, and he's always looking for ways to do that. Thanks.
So there we have it, Joe Mazzulla talking about that. One of the things he was talking about was Pritchard. It's impossible not to go there because, we started with the Tillman, and I think it's a story, and we will get back to it. It's also a story how, it's also a story how he finished the game, how we got to overtime. Interesting overtime lineup. And it looked like once Tillman went out, they were kind of obviously they had to, based on the shortage here, relying on the single big, which is what I prefer in these instances. I understand the rationale behind Tillman. If you're down Cornette and you have Keita in there too, you really have no big to come in when Al sits. So I get it. Like that's what he wanted to do is, if you started Keita as well, what were you going to do when they both go out and have a lineup with just Tillman as your center? I don't think that's what he wanted to do. So I think he wanted Keita's presence there.
Especially with Simmons coming off the bench.
Yeah, coming off of Al, I believe. So theoretically, I can understand it. I think it was less to do with the Nets matchup and more to do with their personnel shortage with Luke being out with the hamstring. But when you get to overtime, he starts with he goes 3 guards, which is what I've been advocating a little bit more for, certainly in closing or for different times. With
saw that
Pritchard
in Atlanta
there
too. Look good there.
Yeah, I saw it in Atlanta, and I like that. I like that lineup a lot. I feel like double big is a crutch. It's a safety net. And it was with Keita to start, and then it ended up being Al to close. So I don't know if it was just a matter of like giving Al a little bit of a breather. So he had his legs there. You're trying to stagger him. He was already at about that 30-minute mark. So they wanted to make sure rather than run him out for the full 5. But again, Keita starts the OT, finishes with Al, but Pritchard plays the whole way through again. And Pritchard's been in those closing lineups quite a bit. You saw him closing a game with Holiday on the bench one time, so this is real. We're past it now. Like the question when everybody, when all of you guys were predicting 6th man of the year as a bold prediction, the impediment I thought, or anybody who wasn't on board with that prediction, was simply, I don't know if he's going to get those minutes. Like, I just don't think he's going to play enough to get into that world where he can, score enough to be in the conversation. Well, he is playing the minutes, and part of it has to do with Jaylen Brown being out right now, and Porzingis being out as well. Just creates more minutes for everybody. But like this happened. This is kind of what I said, like at the beginning of the year, is like, is Pritchard becoming that guy where you're like not just throwing him in there because you can't play the starters 48 minutes. He's that guy where you're like, I can't wait to get him in off the bench because of the spark he provides. Like, it's better when he's out there. Like, and the only way to get, and you don't want him out there in place of Holiday or White because they're both outstanding. And the best way to get him in impactful times in games is playing that 3-guard lineup. But I mean, he's insane right now. I mean, you can't really do that when Brown comes back, but he's out of his mind right now. And Joe alluded to it there, the 3-level scorer. His ability to get you remember in those early days, Bobby, when we were trying to get him in there and it was like, why is Jeff Teague playing? Just give Pritchard the minutes. and anytime he went in and, he tried to do something beyond shoot an open 3, if he tried to go near the basket, it was just thwap, swatted. He couldn't get any shots off near the rim. It just looked ridiculous. He's so good at it now. That kind of quick pitch, underneath. He had a couple of really good ones now. He really can score from multiple levels. It's really incredible.
Yeah, and there's multiple ball handlers out there in those kind of lineups, especially if Tatum's going to be out there. It gives you great versatility. And they did it with Kada to start the overtime period, and then they switched to Horford there. So you are staggering those guys, and it's a good look for where they're at right now, I think. You get guys who can play up against bigger opponents in there. You got guys that can share ball handling duties. And with Pritchard, you love where he's at as a game manager right now. And even that first year to go where you did with that, John, it wasn't much playmaking from him, but it was great dribbling. So you felt good about the ball being in his hands. You felt good about him being able to at least protect the ball in the time that he was on there out there for them. So you just feel great about him right now. You are getting positive returns from the minutes, whether it's against starting units or second units. You're getting offensive rebounding from him. You're getting 3-point shooting from him. So there's no reason not to have him out there as often as possible. And we've said it through the injuries. He's now a 30-minute-a-game guy. And so that's where you start to dream about six-man. That's where you start to utilize him in closing lineups, I think. And I know they don't want to start him because, you got White and Holiday out there. But as we saw tonight, there's a strong case to finish games with him with the personnel that they have right now.
It's amazing. And you're right. You're up to 28 minutes. You're up to 16 points a game, which is leading all bench scorers in the NBA right now. And this is heading into
By the way,
game. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I wouldn't have minded him taking the last shot in regulation.
I if I spend time on that, people will think I'm a hater, but raise your hand out there in Celtics Nation if that's the shot you want to see ever again for the rest of your lives. The Tatum off balance, step back, three, where he had to start and start. It's just such a bad shot.
Especially coming off the great play they ran before to get him the 2 inside.
I understand there's some logic behind it, and someone had, commented on Twitter when I made a little snide remark about that shot. Look, the step back 3 you can time to be the last shot of the game much better than you can a drive. If that's really an important part of taking that shot in a tie game situation, it makes sense because you can really know that you're going to let it fly with X amount of time, and that's the last play of the game. And if it goes in, you win, and if not, it's OT. But if you try to drive and you turn it over or you shoot a little too quick, you do open the door a crack for the other team to get the ball. So I get it. I get the philosophy. He's just not.
You're playing defense on offense almost.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like it. It's a safe play. It's a not to win play. It's let's just make sure we don't lose it here sort of play.
Yep.
But
it hasn't worked well.
Pritchard, someone else.
It prevented them from losing, going the other way, certainly, but it hasn't won them many games.
No, it doesn't. Exactly. It's a don't lose scenario. But yeah, it was gross. But yeah, sure.
Well, it goes back to their approach. They're launching all these threes. They're taking this approach on offense. Obviously, 1, because of their personnel, but 2, to minimize the mistakes, minimize the turnovers, make sure they get shots off. And this is a game, again, where you see the impact, as Mazzulla talks about, of the shot totals. The Nets weren't shooting good all game. They were shooting tough shots. Thomas had it going for a little while. You had shades of Schroder at his best, but mostly an inefficient game from him. So it's mostly just the Nets shot totals, their offensive rebounds, their ability to just get them up there fast that kept them in the lead for pretty much the whole game here. So that's why they're launching all these threes. It gets annoying. It gets frustrating when they go into these cold spells like they're in right now. But how many turnovers did the Celtics have tonight? Like, they're maintaining pretty low totals in that
Well, yeah,
department.
they had
10.
that bad start.
Or-
They were 9 in the first half. They were 10 against Golden State. The 9 was the second most they'd had in the first half of a game all year. So it was bad, and they cleaned it up. But they started poorly there with the turnovers, at least. Are you mad at me?
No, sorry, I'm going in and out here.
It's like you can't do that because I don't know if you're there or not.
No, I'm getting some Wi-Fi. I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna change it if it keeps going, but I can live with it for now.
Okay, no, you're good, and I think you sound okay. Yeah, we're talking about a little bit about the shooting. Ice cold from three now, as you said. They're keeping with that approach, but it's bad. They started in the first 4 games of the year, scorching 40-something%, top of the league in both makes and attempts and percentage, 31.6% from three over the last 6 games. That they they escaped with a win tonight. This game goes down as a loss. They'd be 3-3 over their last 6. Obviously, it didn't happen. So 4-2 over their last 6. But the shooting is really cratered, 31.6% from 3-point range. Again, this is how it goes with threes. They don't always fall. You're going to get hot. You're going to get cold. How much of this is the settling type of three? How much of it is, again, in terms of approach, I did feel like today was just jack it up and hope that it goes in, a little bit of settling for three rather than working for the three. But also just some guys were cold on shots they normally hit. Hauser couldn't hit anything, and all of those threes were decent. Maybe a couple of them were rushed, but I mean, that's his game, the quick release, and he just, 2 for 10. He was brutal. Tatum just firing away. He almost had to, though, because offensively they couldn't get much going. D. White, again, this wasn't one of his better 3-point shooting games. So ice cold across the board. And it's a trend. I mean, they haven't cracked 35%. Yeah, they've only cracked 35% once. They've been at 35% or lower each of the last 6 games. So they really haven't had. Not only is it overall bad, it's been bad every game. This isn't an outlier game where they shot really poorly that gets the percentage down over 6 games. It's 35, 33, 28, 26%. It's just been every game has been below average shooting three for the last 6.
Yeah, so tonight specifically, I think to start the game, you get all those Tillman ones. They're leaving him open. For a lot of the game after that, I felt like they left Horford open, so ball ends up in his hands quite a bit there. And the transition game for them, I think, ended up being a mix of that stretch where Hauser's out there and they're trying to get him the quick looks in the corner, and I felt like he was rushing his shot a little bit in that spot. And then obviously Pritchard ends up taking a lot of long ones more often than not. So difficult looks across the board for them. I feel like White, Holiday were more focused on going inside. Those guys are screening for a lot of this game too. So that's for packing the paint. They had a couple big bodies in there. I feel like they were trying to take that away from the Celtics, who didn't have many great finishers, available to them in this game. And that's still something you want to see Kata do a little bit better, be an option in there, be a threat around the rim, as we continue to make these Rob comparisons. So I feel like the floor just shrunk a little bit.
After tonight, we're never making another Rob comparison for anybody who's paying attention to what's going on over in Portland tonight. My Lord, Rob Williams. No, it's in Minnesota. Minnesota. I'm sorry. Rob Williams comes off the bench, plays his first minutes of the game alongside that UConn kid Klingon, who, by the way, hasn't played since his first stint because he's been terrible. Rob goes 14 minutes in the first half, 4 of 5, including a 3-pointer, 13 points in a team.
We've been waiting 1 year for this.
And a team high -2. It sounds sad, but that's where he was at because they were getting stomped. But Rob's been Rob his first game of the year, and this wasn't a three as time was winding down at the end of a shot clock. He went for it. Like he just lined up at 3. He lined up at 3 and just dropped it. He caught it and just shot it. Done. Unbelievable.
We were watching, and I said it to you. Second half was going on, but you told me Rob's in the game, so I had to turn it on. And seeing those two guys out there together, was Rob in the corner. I'm like, is Rob going to shoot a three? He's just
And he
standing in the
did.
corner, and he did. And we always knew he could do it, right?
But he did everything. A putback up, he gets a putback, he gets a lob. I mean, full Rob Williams experience again, with the whole
And we know
thing
he's not
again,
going to end the year there probably, right?
he's
So
got
that's one
3
of the
stocks. He's going to make somebody so happy. I know, Bobby, we can't, Celtics can't do anything. I'm willing to do a lot to find a way to get Rob Williams back here. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not going to happen. So
I know
the
it's
story's
not.
going to be which contender in the East is going to grab him and make him part of their plan to try to beat the Celtics. And Indiana needs a center now. I mean, they had Enrique Freeman in there tonight with all their injuries.
Miami?
New York, Miami, maybe, if the rookie there doesn't pan out. So
you
this
never
team
know
for
what goes
across
on
the
with
East that
Mitchell
needs
Robinson
centers.
with New York, but I
feel like
there's
Milwaukee
some there.
could use a little athleticism too.
They could, and honestly, like I said, Golden State was the place I thought he was going to go last year, but yeah, man,
They got a little more depth there now.
I got goosebumps watching Rob, for real.
Maybe
tonight.
even Denver.
I
There's a
was
lot of
geeked
teams
up.
that
Anyway,
could use them.
we're going to get back to the podium in a little bit. We want to tell you, of course, while we wait, about
Imagine him and
some of
Jokic playing together.
Be awesome. Need to tell you about our sponsors. We're going to start with Prize Picks, America's #1 DFS app. You want to get in there, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. It says it on the screen. 2 or more players. Pick your stats and watch the money roll in up to 100 times your money when you get in on Prize Picks right now. And again, a great time of year with so many sports kicking all at once. Look at these great deals. Flex Friday, Taco Tuesday, a lot of great promotions. And when you sign up today, we're going to give you a great promotion, which is play 5, get 50 instantly. That's it. That's all you have to do. Use that code CLNS. Bang. It's on the screen. Play 5, get 50, just like that. You do not have to win. You just have to play. Sign up today. Use that code CLNS. Also want to tell you about Game Time. NBA season, full swing. You want to score those last-minute tickets, get in on Game Time. Download that app. Use the code CLNS. $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Great features on this app. Extremely easy to use, user-friendly. Just scroll through, find your event, all-in pricing, panoramic view from your seat so you know exactly what it is that you are getting in on. And again, as we said, you download it today, you use the code CLNS, you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. So again, check out Game Time and get in to see your favorite team, your favorite show, whatever it is. Patriots will be back home after next week. You want to check out the Drake May experience. It's a ton of fun. Use that code CLNS, $20 off your first purchase. So Bobby, back to it. We got Al Horford. We're going to peek in for a minute.
Not ideal. I just think that, we have to, make sure that we come out, continue to come out more focused. I feel like, we've eased into the past couple games, and you can't do that. You simply can't. And I think that the game changed for us when Peyton and Nemi and Sam and those guys came in. They just brought us good energy, that the game started to shift our way. And that's how we were able to, I feel like, get back in the game.
Al, it seemed like, you guys missed a lot of open looks, things that usually happen, go for you, didn't. And they were getting the breaks, the 50-50 balls, the offensive rebounds. How do you kind of flip mentally and become the harder playing team? Because I see the fourth quarter and overtime, you guys, set in and played harder. How do you make that in-game adjustment when things aren't working out offensively?
I think the biggest thing, to your point, is to stay locked in on the things that you can control. And I feel like defensively, we were doing a good job for the most part, and we didn't get discouraged by our offense. And that's difficult sometimes. It's difficult for teams. I feel like we can get caught up in that. And I just think that for our group, we continue to push, continue to fight. And our defense is what gave us, the chance tonight, because
yeah, offense wasn't working, shots weren't falling, and we had to rely on our defense.
You talked about it a little bit with John and Gary's question, but I asked Joe about the difficulty of sticking to your game plan when they're making tough shots and you guys are missing some of the open ones, and he said it's not tough.
All right, so that's Al Horford. I like hearing that stuff, Bobby.
He's usually
the level of
the litmus test there, right, on the competitiveness.
Yeah, and that's pretty honest. It's like, again, it was a lot of standing around. How many guys were just watching loose balls fall to the floor, not attacking rebounds, shooters being open and not closing out? It was a one possession on, one possession off. It wasn't like a total disaster. I mean, the very, very, very beginning, they were not ready for the Nets, coming at them the way they did. And, all of a sudden you're down, 13? What was it to start? 13-0 or 12? I forget.
12-0. Yeah.
12-0. So yeah, obviously it's not rocket science to say that they started slow and weren't ready for it, but yeah, they just didn't have a game plan. Their offense wasn't flowing. You get those games where it's like, this will be easy. I'll just kind of do my thing, score my buckets, and we're better than them. And it didn't happen. So, Al calling them out is good. It's not like this isn't one of these freak out games. There's a kernel of truth to Joe's stuff. I think, we get spoiled here, and Celtics fans are a little spoiled because they're so used to them winning almost every game and also winning shorthanded all the time. They won the freaking NBA Finals without one of their three best players easily. So you're used to people being out and it not mattering, but it definitely took its toll tonight. Still no excuse for the slow start. But even if they didn't start like that, this might have been a tough game because they were, again, Brown, Porzingis, and again, Luke really messes with your rotation here. And Drew, thank you, buddy. We love to see that. All of you OGs have been with us from the beginning. We appreciate it. And LFG, indeed. Thanks a lot, Drew. Drew 617, one of our OGs as well. We do appreciate that. And again, anybody here throwing in, we always appreciate the contribution. Goes directly to the hosts, not those tyrants who run the company. So yes, that is greatly appreciated.
So 12-4 in the offensive glass, that's gonna kill you, and that's what they normally do. The other team, right? We talk about you got the shooting, but it's also the hustle, the defense, the other things that extend that advantage that you have on other teams. So obviously, when you don't have the shooting, when you don't have the depth, when you don't have the hustle, this is what ends up looking like. And the fact that you can still win games is pretty impressive. Sam Hauser, we talked to him at Shoot Around, said that this morning. It was like, we've been pretty good so far, and we can still be a lot better than we've been. And, that hustle thing, it sticks out to me because obviously the Warriors stopped in the other day and a lot of questions to them about, what's it like to repeat? What do you got to do? What's the key? And they're like, you can't get beat up by that mid-season lull because, and Curry said this specifically, you're glowing for this first couple weeks here. You're still in that championship mode. You got your ring on and you're feeling great. But then you get into these Nets games and Hawks games and Wizards games and whatever else is coming up. That's where you got to be able to turn it on. And that's how, you can fall into some of these traps in these kind of games, especially shorthanded. So that's that.
Yeah. What'd you think of the ball movement tonight? Again, you got people coming in here and, saying it gets a little sticky. And I think it does sometimes. When you're down offensive options, it makes sense that you would, Tatum's going to just look to figure out a way to score and it doesn't, move as much. But, I don't know if that's, I don't know exactly how I feel about that, but I'm just addressing some of the comments here in the chat. I thought Tatum had some nice passes later in the game as things got flowing a little bit once they got out of that early.
Yeah, you had a guy
open.
You had a guy open in the corner all game pretty much. So you need to hit that, and they did. Those guys.
I think it comes down to that.
I think
it comes down to just the misses. Yeah.
I think if you look back in the film, as Joe says, the potential assists were probably through the roof for Tatum in this one. And you're trying to go after Thomas, right? You're trying to go after Schroder. You're trying to exploit some of those matchups. And the one thing I do love, maybe you don't like the passing, or maybe you don't like some of the turnovers early, but they got out on the run in this game. And I think that's probably the biggest reason they
For real,
won.
a lot of transition points.
Especially for Tatum. I think to close the third, he had 4 straight buckets or free throws on 4 straight runouts on an 8-2 run. They needed to get back in the game because they fell behind by like 7-8 points a couple of times.
You don't see him leaking out like that often and out ahead of the break. I love seeing him kind of charging free into the open court like that.
Yeah, because guys got to foul him, or he can even dunk and finish through a foul in that spot, which he did at one point.
He's big. That's going to result in at least a foul every single time. If there's numbers and he's going to the basket, that's automatic. You want to see more of that. Yeah, I want to see him running and attacking. Again, that's what I mean.
You got to get boards. You got to force turnovers. That's not something that they're doing great here.
How many years we talk about it? Like just walking it up off of misses. Like, no, so much better when they go and the pace, I think
that was the biggest reason they won tonight. Yeah.
I can hear Tommy Heinsohn screaming, run.
Yeah, no, they need to do it. And Tatum needs to do it specifically, especially with Brown out, right? He's the guy usually handling that responsibility. He's not there. Yeah. He's the guy who's shooting most of your 2-point shots. He's not there. So you're feeling his loss in areas where you don't have guys that can replicate his skill set. Even some of the on-ball defense, I thought there was a lot to be left desired there. And defensively as a whole, like they gave up 7 of 10 shooting at the rim early. That started to clean up by the end of the game, but there were still some situations, even to start overtime, where Schroeder's lobbing it up to a guy, or they're just getting right to the rim. Schroder, I thought, burned them a couple plays into the second half. So again, a lot of this just goes back to malaise. Like it just felt like they rolled into this game thinking it was going to be easy, and you go down 12-0 and you're trying to figure out how to get back from there. And the Nets played hard. The Warriors came in here and played hard. The more I went back and watched that game the other night, and, Curry had his moments and they switched lineups and they did this and that, but that was a case of Golden State coming in, and you hate to boil it down to this sometimes, but they outplayed you. They wanted that one more. They got the loose balls. And even Joe said that after the game. So you're in this stretch now where you're getting beat physically and hustle wise.
But that's the thing is like, this is where, like, again, it's always people are surprised by like my take on this, because some people come here and they want to hear me unload when they have like a lethargic loss. Like they have nothing. It's the Celtics don't have anything to prove. Like Golden State, this was their. It's nice to have the script flipped on this stuff, Bobby, isn't it? Like it used to be Celtics would play the Warriors and that was their Super Bowl, and they'd lose by a point and it would be a moral victory. And we'd be talking about how Steve Kerr said, that's one of the best teams in the NBA. We could see them in the finals. And you'd be all glowing like, oh, they said something nice about us, now it's the opposite. It's like, they won. I guess they wanted it a little more, and nobody bats an eye. There's no panic over that Golden State loss or people flipping out. Like you're getting someone's best shot the entire time. And again, even though I know Milwaukee, who lost again tonight and has fallen to 2-7, isn't that they're going over to play the Bucks Sunday, and this is a trap game. It's a classic sandwich game between two more compelling, interesting matchups on a Friday, coming off the Golden State win with Milwaukee coming in on Sunday. I totally get it. I totally get.
No one knows what Ben Simmons bringing. Did you see the stat? He hadn't played here in 1,200 days.
No, shut up. Really?
Yeah, this is the first time we've seen him in Boston in a while.
That's unreal. What did he finish
He
with?
looked okay tonight. He had like 8
nice
points.
Passes.
Nice passes, rebounds.
He had a couple of shots that like shouldn't have gone in, but they did, and I think he felt a little better about himself. Like a weird floater in the lane that he kind of just heaved off the back rim and it bounced a few times and it fell. But he's fine. I mean, the remnants of the skill set are there. He just, if he knows he's not really going to try to score, his game's always going to be limited. You know, there's only so much he can do. He's never.
It doesn't
he's
seem
never
like he can
attacking with-
impose. It doesn't seem like he
Yeah.
can impose himself physically the same way he used to either.
Yeah.
Like you're mostly getting some bench rebounding, outlet passing, you know, transition play from him, and maybe that little huck layup he got over Horford. So it's also underwhelming. You wonder where his career is going to go from here, because this is minimum stuff from him, right? Maybe he gets another minimum deal after this, but you don't know how much he loves this, right? Like, does he want to keep doing it for the minimum? Does anyone even want him with all the limitations in his game at that point? It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. But for now, I'll give it to that team. They don't have much talent, John. There's a lot of guys out there you probably don't recognize, and they hung with the Celtics here off hustle, tough shot making, and
They don't have much
physical
talent.
defense.
They don't have much talent only because you refuse to you refuse to acknowledge the consistent greatness of Dennis Schroder, who's, by the way, averaging 20 points a game on this team right now, shooting 50% from the floor and 49 from three. So let's give Schroder, and with 7 assists a game, let's give Schroder some love, shall we? Can you? Are you capable?
I guess a little for the start here, and there's some things he can do. I didn't think you were going to go in this direction with the game he had, though, which wasn't great. 9 of 23 and some bad turnovers, and
Yeah, he didn't have a great game, but he's been great for them, and they lost him a bunch of times too. He just goes. He's fast as hell.
yeah, and that scoring burst is in him. That downhill burst, it's there, but there's just so many other things there that you're like, oh, when you see the bad part of his game, it's like 50-50. You know, one play he's great and he's doing something amazing. He hit a big shot late too, but then he's traveling, or he's just laying down after getting hit by a screen, or just doing something else, rolling the ball up. So it's still interesting to think that he was here for that short stint and definitely had some moments, but he's just bounced around. You know, where's he going to end up this year? Back on the Lakers, like that feels almost inevitable, because that's really the only spot where it's worked out for him consistently.
Right. So,
now, you know, John, not my favorite guy, but I'll give a hat tip for a decent start to this year.
Got it.
He gets to have the ball in his hands and take 23 shots. That's always great.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on here, again, odds and ends. We're going to hear a little bit more from the TD Garden.
Tatum's talking tonight.
Tatum, I'm sure will be out there. Hold on one second.
What do you think of his game right now? You know, 10 games into the year, wherever we are.
It's impossible, right? Like, there's no question he's playing at an extremely high level. I guess at this point, the only nitpicking is like perfection, right? Like, he's capable of playing a near perfect game. So when he doesn't, it's like, well, why are you opting for that? You know, like, why? There's certain things where, like, you're not going to eliminate every step back pull, step back, jumper from his game or contested two. But sometimes when he does it, it's like, why, what did you feel the need to have done that? You know, you see little things like, him getting frustrated and wanting to dribble his way out of trouble when he just doesn't need to. When he passes quick, everything moves great. The stuff that he doesn't need to do, I feel like he could play a perfect game every night. So when I get frustrated, it's only because he doesn't, not because he played a bad game. He's been consistently a top 2 or 3 player in the league all year. If the season ended today, I honestly think he wins MVP. I know it's stupid to say that after 10 games, but like, yeah, Anthony Davis has the stats and Jokic has been amazing, but it's Tatum, best player on the best team, doing everything well and playing at a super high level. So it's hard to like nitpick him, but it's just, I guess that's what it comes down to with me, is like, I don't know why he does some of the things he does, because it feels like a choice rather than like, oh, well, the shot didn't fall today, because he can do it all right now. He's doing it all.
Yeah, and you can either look at it through a lens of, is he doing the right things? Is he making the right plays? We've talked about this forever.
Because I
Or you
think he
look
can
at
do it every time. I think sometimes he's just I want to try to do this instead, or he does stubborn kind of old whatever seeps in like pointlessly, and he's still, even when he does that, he's playing an amazing game, and he played another good game tonight.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is he's putting up 30 in his sleep right now. We didn't, and you specifically, John, didn't think that's how it was going to go. And I know they've had some injuries and stuff.
I thought he'd
but-
defer more because
Yeah.
whatever. I thought, but anyway.
So that being there is big, and that could change as the year goes on. They get more guys back, or Porzingis is definitely going to change some things here too. But that's big that he's been able to do that. The shot's been there more often than not. I feel like he's getting to the free throw line, and the passing's ticking up just a little bit. And even though it didn't show on the stat sheet going into this one, I like the rate he's passing at. I like the shots he's producing. So it's all good stuff, and it looks like he's taking a seat at the podium right now.
Oh, let's hear from JT.
Questions for Jayson?
Hey, Jayson. Joe said that you guys live by a principle and not a feeling, talking about how Nets are making tough shots. You guys aren't necessarily making the open threes that you guys usually make, and sticking to that math. Is that something he's always sort of emphasized to you guys, and how often does he have to bring it up again when stuff like that happens, when the Nets are making tough shots, when you guys aren't necessarily making the ones you're used to?
When he's bringing up, like, what exactly?
Basically, like, sticking to the math, not changing the game plan just because some of the shots you guys are used to making aren't falling and stuff like that.
I mean, yeah, that's like principles of life. Like, you got to be the same person when things are going great and when things aren't. It's not time to panic when things aren't going. He always talks about, like, it's not always going to go how we expect, right? The Nets aren't the same team as last year. They're playing differently. They got a different coach. They're playing with more energy and freedom and things like that. So he always says, expect it to go unexpected. We're missing some guys. We weren't hitting shots that we normally do. How are we going to respond? How are we going to figure out a way to win? And it's not from getting away from things that make us who we are. Sometimes you're going to make shots. Sometimes you're going to miss them. But we still got to play the way that we believe to be the right way to play.
Is there a way he specifically helps you guys practice to expect the unexpected, or is it more just like a general openingness that he wants you to play with?
I mean, we constantly talk about it. There's times, right, we could be down 16-2, and he might come to the bench smiling, like, this is good for us. This is what we should want. He's right. Like, sometimes that we need that. Not that we want to be down 16-2 all the time, but we got to figure out a way to win the game still.
Was he smiling when you guys were down 16-2?
No, not today. He wasn't.
Along the lines of your first answer, like when you're there and you see, for example, Sam, you're driving, you see Sam, is there ever a hint of like, oh, he's cold, I might as well just do this myself? Not that you don't want to pass it to him, but just like a feeling of, oh, he just doesn't have it tonight, I'm going to just do this. You don't have that feeling? You hit him and he hit that shot.
Yeah, I mean, no, never, ever. If Sam's open, if he's not open, we always want him to be a threat. Not necessarily like shooter every time, but we have so much confidence in Sam that we were mad at him when he missed it, and he was like mad at himself. Al was yelling at him on the bench, like, yo, don't ever put your head down. Like, the next one, we always believe the next one is going in because he's such a proven shooter. He works really hard at his craft. So no, I'm never like, oh shit, Sam just missed the last two shots, I'm not about to pass it to him. Like, no, I would never think that.
Jayson, Peyton's really improved his finishing in the paint. He's driving like right under the rim and scoring on the guys. You also had to learn how to score off of 2 feet. What was the challenge of doing that, and what do you see out of Peyton, especially at a guy at his size doing that?
Just a willingness to. It's a little unorthodox. Like, he takes that last little dribble under the basket, or he takes an extra dribble where, normally guys would lay it up, and he takes one more dribble where it gives the defender.
What's up, Noah?
How's it going?
Good. Listening to Jayson Tatum just there, and welcoming in Noah. I think Bobby had to take a powder because he wasn't thrilled with his Wi-Fi situation. So I'll throw it over at you. We're just listening to Jayson Tatum talking about tonight, and good win on a mediocre effort for the team right now. What was your vibe off of tonight's game?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I always have the positive spin, but I did think that first quarter or so, was pretty lackluster, just the effort. A couple of times, I'm filming through my phone and I go back and I'm like, is this in slow motion? Because just of how slowly they were moving back on defense. But Joe kind of said it, it almost felt like they made a choice to start defending better and to play harder. I think Tatum was kind of central to that, especially when Jaylen Brown is out, having someone set the tone defensively that's kind of an offensive player. I think Tatum was really important because defensively in the beginning, he made some really poor decisions, poor plays, and then down the stretch, he was locked down. So it just reminds you that he is capable of being an elite defender. And that was kind of my biggest takeaway kind of thinking about this game is he has this, he had the slow start, but then obviously he was really the reason they were able to pull it out towards the end there too.
Yeah, it's
definitely locked in.
The conversation we were just having prior to that was, Bobby had asked, how did Tatum play? And it's weird these last two games, assessing how he played, looking at the box score and seeing that he was integral in, they didn't win last game, but without him, they're not even in the game. And tonight he's obviously the key to it. And yeah, one of the things we talk about is that choice. It's not like he gets lazy often, or it's just, he's capable of playing a near perfect game every night. So when you don't see it, sometimes I think it can get frustrating at times, whether it's the defense or whether it's forcing shots that he just doesn't need to, or, trying to stubbornly dribble out of a double instead of passing out of it quickly and turning it over or clogging up the offense. And it's you don't need to do that. You can do the other thing and it works great. You're good at it. He's so good at so many different things. I think the expectation level is so high that when you do see even little dips, people will come away from it. And some people are I thought Tatum sucked tonight. And that's a vibe, and then you go back and look at it and wait, no, he didn't. I guess I'm just remembering flashes or moments, because I think maybe that expectation level for who he is and what he can do is ridiculously the bar is set so high right now.
The big one tonight's the last shot. And as you said, John, there's reasons they want to do that. Doesn't look great on camera. It doesn't look great in the stat sheet. I mean, you pull that one away and he's 5 of 12 from 3 and 40%. So
yeah, but he got caught.
Sometimes it just comes down to a couple bad shots.
Yeah, it's not even the shots. I thought he was in and out on some possessions, particularly defensively and this and that. But yeah, you're right. Oftentimes it comes down to very little, a couple of bad choices, a couple of bad shots. But again,
that's going to be the margin in the MVP race. And that's the standard we're holding him to here. So it's tough because he can be so great in a game like this and it's still not quite there. And a lot of it's going to be Jokic, right?
It's a B- Tatum game. Yeah.
And if that's a B- game, you got an MVP caliber player. I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the good sign. The passing down the stretch was huge, and I know this is not a new thing. I feel like last year in the playoffs, he kind of established this as an unwavering part of his game. But finding Sam Hauser in the corner, that was a brilliant pass. That he was literally in the air and behind the back.
Found Hauser, Horford too, right?
Yeah, and then you got Horford in overtime. And I loved that quote just now that we were listening to about how he never really loses confidence in those guys, because I think it's one thing to say that, but we actually do see him. He's not making the calculus of this guy's cold. He actually does have faith. He'll make the pass to Jordan Walsh. He'll make the pass to whoever he needs to make the pass to. So I don't know if he was always like that, but certainly I think that's true. It's not just lip service in the postgame.
And the way they're guarding him, John, we wondered this year, would more teams play him straight up? They're throwing 3-4 guys
I need to get in an opposing coach's film room and I need them to explain to me why they think this is the right decision, because it's so counterintuitive. And I get it. They have entire staffs. They have the analytics. I'm sure it makes sense, but from watching this team, it's perfect. You forced him into a double team that he'll perfectly pass out of and has a great 3-point shooters around him.
So I was thinking about it, and I determined this I thought about it off of the Golden State game because again, going back to Dallas, and Bobby, I said it earlier. I'm like, Dallas is doing the wrong thing. Like they should not be doubling Tatum every single time. They should try to play it straight. They're killing themselves with it. I didn't get it, and especially since he was cold last year, I would bait Tatum into a step back every time if I was an opposing coach. Like play a little off of him and bait him into taking that all the time. Play him straight up, a little bit off, and have him pull up and shoot a contested 2 all day. But I think one of the reasons why they double is perhaps you can knock him off his game and off his rhythm and force bad possessions and bad shots later just because he's like, shit, I got to get mine. So if you get the ball out of his hands nonstop like Golden State was doing where they were blitzing him instantly, not once he started getting downhill.
They were quick.
The second he got the ball in his hands, they were on him. And that's frustrating as hell because he can't even start moving to make a play. And my thinking is perhaps one of the the strategy is exactly that, is if I eliminate him completely, he's going to start doing dumb shit because he's not going to want to be completely taken out of this game. You're never going to have a game, even if they double him on every possession. Tatum's never going to have a Jokic game in his career where he just shoots 8 times. Like, okay, that's what they did. They doubled me every time. I'll pass out of it, end up with 16 assists, 18 boards, and I'll shoot 8 times, and I'm fine. That's never going to happen with Tatum. He's going to find a way to get those shots off. So maybe you're trying to wear him down. It's a little bit of a, war of attrition over time. But it doesn't really work. Even when he has those, you'll always end up with, like I said, this B- stat line like he had tonight, which is not super efficient, but like really well-rounded. Ends up, making some, terrific passes that won the game late and, found a way to get his. Bobby mentioned tonight one of the differences was him getting out on the run in transition a little bit and getting some easy buckets or getting to the free throw line as well. But that's the only thing I can think of why teams keep doing that, because it doesn't make sense to me. I understand it also tonight in these lineups with that double big lineup to start. Like, of course you're going to double Tatum. I would do that I would have done that as well.
The Golden State game too, you were double big quite a bit. So
yeah. So I get it now with Jalen out. You're right. The teams, it makes more sense, but they were doing it with the healthy lineup. So I don't get it.
I'm sure back to Noah's point about the numbers is that, especially against a bad matchup, which is what they're trying to line them up in a lot of the time. Brooklyn had a couple guards you could go at. You don't want to give that up straight up because it probably just has monstrous numbers. Compared to having him kick out to Horford for 3 or, some of these other guys. And it was clearly Horford they were playing off and Tillman early. And, teams are going to do it in different ways and teams have different personnel to be able to do it. I don't think the Nets had the personnel here. Warriors did. They scrambled inside, scrambled out, so they were still able to get out to the 3-pointers. The way they did it was pretty unique and effective. But most teams are just pulling a guy off of Hauser or Horford or one of those guys, and those guys hit threes.
They did. Noah, other takeaways from tonight's game? I know one of the big Horford mentioned it in his post-game press conference, but like you got that brutal start with that double big lineup. And I want to get your thoughts on Tillman as well, where we started talking about it a little bit, but you get the reserve. The starters came out flat as hell. You get the reserves come in, and
is he done?
Among the people. Well, we'll get to Tillman in a second. Among the people that came in were Hauser, Pritchard, and Queta. Queta, we've talked about a good bit the last couple of games, but again, Pritchard continues to take things to another level here. And like the energy lift was instant. And this was the conversation we had at the beginning of the year, which is like, will he play enough minutes? Well, right now he is. And is he going to be the type of guy where you're like, they might be like, you can make cases when Jalen comes back. There are some games where you might close with Queta and Pritchard and leave a Holiday and an Al potentially on the bench just based on how the game is going. It's not unthinkable, but prior to the season, it would have been unthinkable. And that's how they started overtime with the 3-guard lineup. That is, obviously there's no Brown tonight, but like he's played his way not only into like 6th man favorite, but into is he part of your closing lineup no matter what now? Like there's decisions to be made with the way that he's playing right now.
And someone always believed Real quick now, someone always believed in him as an all-star. Jack Simone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know. I couldn't believe Jack made that fake tweet. I wouldn't have even seen it if you didn't send it to me. So thanks, Bobby. No, what I was going to say is, first of all, the Celtics are really lucky to be in a position where if a guy like Drew Holiday or Derek White closes on the bench, you don't have a problem. And I think that's kind of an underestimated thing because at the end of the day, like you have to close with Tatum and Brown. Like even if one of them is playing terribly in every single way, like those are your stars, those are your guys. Like you have to have them on the floor. I would be very surprised if they ever moved away from either of those. But Drew Holiday and Derek White are like two of the lowest ego guys in the NBA, considering everything that they've accomplished. And so if on a given night, it just feels like Pritchard should be out there, I don't think there's going to be any hesitation to put him out there just because of the fact that it's Drew Holiday or it's Derek White. And so that's the good thing. And I do think that there are going to be plenty of moments this season where Pritchard is on the floor, even at the expense of one of those guys, whether it's because they need him for helping to break the press or they need him for, defense. Because I think there's been certain games this season where he's actually been better defensively than the other options, just like the Halliburton game. I thought that he was great on Halliburton. So there's going to be certain matchups against smaller guys where he actually might be the best option, even though he's obviously not going to be as versatile as Drew or Derek. So yeah, I think he just goes to show, a lot of what I remember from last fall is that Joe Mazzulla was saying, he wasn't shooting well last year in the fall. And he was saying it doesn't matter that he's not shooting well because he's doing everything else really well. And he's doing enough to warrant being out there. And now we're seeing when those things are all combined, like he's shooting well and all those skills that he developed and he kind of solidified, they're all still in play. And yeah, another 20-point performance. I'll leave it there. I'm not going to say anything crazy, but I'm just going to say I feel really good about my prediction.
Say something crazy that we can come back to later in the year. Go.
Okay, I think Pritchard's going to be an all-star in the next 3 years.
I love it.
Yeah, it might not. It might have to be non-Boston, or it's going to be like starting guard when Drew Holiday's like gone or something. But
we mentioned that. I mentioned that earlier. Is all of a sudden, you look ahead to the future, and it's like that's not as okay when you do inevitably have to shed some payroll or people age out. Pritchard right now looks like the best contract in the entire NBA. So,
and he's a 3-level scorer. Joe said it. I
that's what Joe said.
You know how many times last year I had to bait Joe into saying something like that, and he never did. And today he said it. So
he did.
I didn't even have to bait him.
We're going to continue the conversation and get some more thoughts here. I do want to quickly mention Rocket Money. This is one of my favorite spots, and Rocket Money's back advertising here with the Garden Report. So we want to tell you about it. What is it? Personal finance app helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitor spending, helps you lower your bills. I can't tell you how much money Rocket Money has saved me. Hundreds. I'm not kidding. This is not an exaggeration. Stuff I completely forgot about. And again, most people have no clue how much they have out there. They think they spend $50-$60 on subscriptions. Your average American spends $300. I'm an addict. I was probably up to like 500 or 600, an insane amount of subscriptions. Some of that stuff I didn't even know I had anymore. Some of it was old Garden Report sponsored things. I'm not even going to mention who, but Rocket Money finds it, tells you about it, and helps you cancel it and saves you a bunch of money. 5 million users have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Unbelievable. Saves members up to $740 a year when you use all of the app's features. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel those unwanted subscriptions going to rocketmoney.com/garden. Once again, that is rocketmoney.com/garden. Trust me, you will not regret it. Let's get into the game again. And I do want your thoughts here. I hate beating on a guy when he's down, and I hate beating on a guy who we all like because he's a really good dude and who you would like to see succeed here. But we're reaching a point of critical mass here with the Xavier Tillman experience. And again, I understand the rationale. Is Luke in the chat already? Noah? You've got Luke face.
I saw Luke. No. I was.
He's your fifth center.
So Xavier Tillman, we've got a problem here. And I totally get why he played tonight. When Cornette is out,
I think they wanted to save Kada to come in and be that reserve unit, big second unit guy when Horford came out. It made sense theoretically, even though I would have gone with Hauser. Doesn't matter. And then maybe just put Walsh in that second lineup. But I get it. But Joe did it. And then Joe saw what we all saw. And then Joe never played him again, which is kind of damning for overall what they think about Tillman's play right now. For Joe to just look at him and be like, no, I'm not doing this again. That's kind of harsh, right?
Is this for me? Do I have?
Why do you think they started him?
Yes, Noah. No, answer my question.
It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart.
It's hard, right?
It sucks to see someone come in and then obviously just disastrous stress for the team. It was part of it was him, but part of it was also everybody else. But to not get another look is tough. And I think he mentioned it. I think he was passing up some shots. I honestly didn't even realize he did take 3 because I felt like he also passed up a few. So they were really not respecting the shot. And I like giving him the opportunity.
Nor should they. Why should any? This is, if I was an opposing coach, I would say work it so Tillman takes every shot.
Walsh has gone through this too.
Yeah. When those guys are out there, you absolutely want them taking every open shot if you're the opposing team.
Yeah. And the reality is, like, he's played what, like 70 minutes this season. Like, it's not like he's been, we're still talking a limited sample here. So I'm not ready to say like this is Xavier Tillman's future and he's never going to be able to contribute or impact this team, because I do think we get a little short-term memory. Like, we were feeling pretty good about this guy in the finals when like Nemi was nowhere to be found because he had a better.
He had one good game. He had one good game.
Yeah, but it was an important time.
It was an important game. It was game 3, and then game 4 it was like, oh God, don't play him anymore.
Yeah. My thing with Tillman is that there's going to be things that he can improve on. And it's like, I do think that the shot can get better. Obviously 0-3, you can only go up from there, but just his mechanics, from what I've seen from him, like, I do think the fact they give him the green light and they don't have, Luka and Nemi don't have the green light. So he's clearly shooting better than them. But the thing that I worry about is that, or at least like talking about Nemi's Kada, like there's things that he just can't do around the rim. Like, that's my concern, is offensively, like, you're so limited. And talking to Memphis people, Memphis reporters and things like that was the experience with him. And I think that part of his game is kind of who he is at this point. And so, like, you can't score around the basket. If your shot's off, like, you're pretty much a 0 on offense. And it's hard to accept that because it's not like he's some high flyer, like he's a rim protector that everybody's afraid of. So it's like, I don't know. It's going to be hard to find a spot for him, and he has to be kind of like at his best across all fronts. And right now, Kada is just running away with it. And honestly, like, I don't think we would have predicted this heading into the season, that in November, this is how we'd be talking about Kada, and this is how we'd be talking about Tillman.
From my standpoint, I feel like they need to get a little more creative with how they're using him offensively, because they've wanted him from day one to be that shooter. I'm not sure at volume it's going to be what you need it to be. Like, we've kicked around 30, right? Can he get over 30? He really hasn't gotten there the last couple of years. So can you screen with him more? Can you send him toward the basket more? I know he hasn't looked great around the rim, but I don't think he's been in many pick and rolls. He can pass out of there, I'm sure. I don't know if that's something he's even worked at, but you do have to be able to make yourself a threat as a non-shooter, and effectively for how teams are guarding him, he's a non-shooter right now, even if he's willing to take them. So the tough part for him right now is Walsh is probably a better option, right? I think Walsh is probably going to shoot better from 3 at volume. It's close, but I think Walsh's shot has looked better. He can do more things mobily, and I think, mobility wise. And I think that's the toughest thing for X right now in every area, even on defense, where he was so good last year. It doesn't look like he's stopping guys quite the same.
The one thing I do want to say, though, is I feel like it's hard to remember how impactful confidence is on how someone looks. Like, obviously, we all know
right,
that.
And that's why you get him to start, right?
Yeah, and so that was Joe. I'm sure that was Joe's intention, and then obviously didn't go according to plan. But like, all of these role players in the last year alone have had just awful moments and also really good moments. And I think that Tillman's in his awful moment, and whether it's a moment or it's something more, I think remains to be seen. I don't think we can run too far ahead with it yet. But I mean, just think about like there have been some Cada games where he's made critical mistakes. Jordan Walsh, we don't need to relive summer league, but like, and then you look at them a few months later and it's like a different person. And so I still have hope in Tillman turning this thing around, but certainly, yeah, early season here.
Well, it goes back to the conversation we've had before, which is like, it doesn't always have to be at the expense of someone else. I know everyone likes to play like big man survivor in the chat where like, oh, you know, Cada was good, Cornette's out, you know, like it doesn't mean that. What you need is
get rid of them.
Yeah. In a perfect world, sometimes depth isn't just like, oh, these are all really good players. Sometimes depth is I have the right tool I need for this game and this moment or this 5-minute stint. So being able to like put Tillman on the shelf for a little bit, but have him there when you need him in the game that you need him, or as an injury backup, or just the right matchup or the right style is useful. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's got to be like a standard part of the rotation. So you want him to just have success, at least in spurts. And right now he's not having any of it. And that's the thing is like, can you criticize Cornette all the time? Cada all the time. They're imperfect players.
But those guys fit.
Very back
end of the rotation. You don't know if he fits.
I don't know yet, but I'm not ready to kick him completely to the curb.
No. But
you're not trying to get him to the point where you need him to fill a nightly role of like 15 to 18 minutes a night coming in and playing with that second unit in place of blank. You just need him to be, honestly, part of the Stay Ready crew and ready to contribute and be able to do okay in those minutes. Because when Porzingis comes back, if Cada is the revelation that he's been recently, even if he comes back down to earth or he continues to have some uneven play, it's another option. Now you have just more options than you thought you had. And that's what's kind of interesting about this team right now is even if Tillman doesn't turn into what you were hoping he was when you got him at the deadline, you have the ascension of both Cada and Pritchard all of a sudden being valuable guys who are eating minutes to add to already the by far best starting lineup in the game or the best top 6 in the game. It's kind of crazy that like you're at the point where it's kind of like, hey, is the guy who's 10th in line to get minutes like doing okay or not? It's really not a huge deal for Tillman's sake, and then for the luxury of having him be able to contribute in some way. You'd like to see him play better, but yeah, I'm not ready to completely jettison him.
No, it's a good point because what are we talking about right now? They're down Brown, Porzingis, and Cornette.
Yeah,
that's 3
Walsh is in that
guys.
same boat too. Yeah, I like Walsh. You just want him to not be brutal, like you want to have. I think Walsh is in the same Tillman bucket a little bit. You're gonna try to sneak some minutes in, and you hope that he can do okay.
Yeah, and these guys are playing roles way above what their level should be here. I mean, when you start Tillman next to Horford,
and I like
you're
that they're doing
saying,
it.
Yeah, but you're effectively saying, go out there and.
I like that Joe had the confidence to do it, to switch it up. I like that he went to Cada. I didn't think that's something Joe would feel comfortable doing while he had Luke healthy. I like that even after Cada playing well, he decided, I'm going to go with Tillman tonight, and felt okay doing that. I like that he's giving Walsh minutes, even though he's not necessarily doing great things with him. I like that. Like we wanted to see more experimentation, and when you're down guys, just let other guys play, much more so than just running all of your starters 40 minutes a night. So I like that Joe's doing it. It's to mixed results right now, but it can only pay out at the end of the year, right? Like that's kind of the point. How can you count on a Tillman or a Walsh to do anything for you in game 70 or 80 or if you need them in the postseason, if you don't give them any run now? So I'm willing to live with it, and I think everyone else is too, but like, I don't think it's that bad that it's happening this way, because the hope is he can play his way out of it a little. You don't want to take him completely out, never see him again because fans are mad because he hasn't played well in the last few games, and then have him be useless the rest of the year. I
think the key in picking him up, and there were some fit questions with him coming in, and for a lot of last year I'm like, all right, why aren't they playing him? Why aren't they using him in certain ways to try to make it fit in better? So yeah, that rep and game play I think is going to be important for trying to figure out where he fits in here. But the reason you go out and get a guy like him more than any other, I think, beyond the skill set, is he did this in Memphis. There were times in Memphis where he didn't play. There were times where he sat on the bench and had to take a back seat to some of the other guys like Adams and Jackson. He even went to the G League at one point and accepted that because there just weren't minutes for him in the NBA. So he seems perfectly fine. There was a moment tonight where he was like waving to the fans, smiling and like blowing kisses after he had been benched. So I don't think he's bummed or out of it at all, but there is a confidence factor here, and confidence in his shot's going to be huge. And I keep going back to the preseason, Noah. He looked better shooting. He looked better moving to me and screening and doing a bunch of different things. And that getting lost in the shuffle a bit here is tough. But I do think part of it's how they're using him. The double big with him out there just isn't a good look.
And I think just the double big in general has been tough, like regardless of which two. I think everybody's benefited when they've been the sole big out there. I'm still curious.
It only works when Porzingis is one of the two bigs.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean double big in what we're working with right now.
Yeah, what you're living with now. I don't like any of the combos.
Yeah, and I would imagine like probably Pritchard would be starting, as far as like with the best 5 out there, but they're probably just thinking we want him to come in and get things going 5 minutes in. Like, so I don't think it's like that's their best lineup. I think they're trying to, be mindful about getting some bench scoring, especially with Sam being more inconsistent earlier on here.
Yeah.
So
this is where it doesn't matter, right, Noah? Because if Pritchard's coming in at the 5 or 6 minute mark and he's going to play 30 minutes a night, starting him makes no difference, right?
Which is why I never like get the starting lineup conversations. It's always a question pregame and postgame and debating and things. And it's like, yeah, it really doesn't matter. I'm more curious about like you said earlier about who's closing in these close games. And tonight we saw Pritchard and Keita start
total
overtime,
minute count and who's closing is far more important than who's starting, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it is cool to give different guys opportunities. I thought last year it was cool too when Svi got a start or O'Shea did. Like it was just an opportunity, or Delano Banton got one. I remember thinking that meant something, and then like a week later he was gone. So yeah,
the Mike Muscala start from a couple of years ago when he put up when he had a 30 piece,
Yeah, and one thing I'll just add is on the Xavier Tillman piece.
Forgot
like,
about that.
They re-signed 3 backup bigs, all of whom weren't really playoff players last year. I mean, Luke had his moments and Tillman had his moments, but they re-signed all those guys on minimums. And right now, as a collective, like that seems like it was a good move, in my opinion. Like Mimi looks like the revelation of the 3. Luke, we know what to expect. And Tillman's the one that struggled a little bit more. But you weren't going to hit it all on all 3 of them. So to me, it was like, let's bring back 3 guys that we know are good locker room guys, 3 guys that understand our system increasingly so, and maybe 1 or 2 of them will end up solidifying themselves as like real options in the future. And maybe behind the scenes, like they knew Nini was the one and we were all sitting here debating. Like, I don't know. But certainly I think you have to be happy with the way that whole plan kind of panned out, even if it's not perfect.
It's like a little, battle robot they've assembled, between like 3, parts that it will make into one, we've cobbled together, a decent backup big with all 3 of these guys, and we'll use them whenever we want to use them there. And I think that that's going to work fine, particularly when Horford comes out. Of greater concern than Tillman right now, because you're not counting on huge contributions there. Obviously, you have Jaylen Brown having missed another game. But again, this is the type of injury. And if you talk to people, in the know and doctors and this and that, this is just a straight up rest injury. And at this point in the year, I'm not super worried about him being out longer. You rest so you don't re-aggravate it. And then he comes back and he's most likely fine. So it is what it is. They're hurting with him. Not in the lineup right now, but I'm not super concerned. Maybe you guys feel different. I am a little concerned with Sam Hauser right now. He does look a teeny bit off, and I don't know if that back is a lingering thing. I didn't love his post-game comment the other day, which is like, I'm mostly good. I still kind of feel it here and there. Like
that was this morning.
Oh, this morning.
Or
was that
at least additionally this morning we asked him about it.
No, that's when it was. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah. The last time I heard from him, that's what he was saying. Yeah.
It was like something you could deal with for a while, which is often how backs go, right? But the minutes are ramping up here. He's shaking off any excuse with it. So if a guy's out there for these many minutes, at some point, you're just going to be like, all right, you're just judging the performance here. So it's clearly something that he's managing. But it's tough because, as you've mentioned, you want to play smaller.
He played 35 minutes tonight.
Yeah. So you want to be able to utilize him. Yeah, and he had that crazy diving play along the sideline against Golden State too,
Yeah,
and just popped
but
right back up and kept going. So I think he's turning the corner here, but clearly it's going to be something that impacts you if you're dealing with back pain.
And
You know,
there's a very
the most concerning quote, or just quote that stood out was, I guess it just might have been from all these years of basketball. It was like, what?
I know that was in Charlotte, right? I was like, that sounds like
Yeah.
you're never going to be okay again.
Yeah,
Yeah, I will
like,
say,
man, it's
that
been a
I know
long
this is
career.
it's probably not. I know it's probably not different than covering any other team, but we've really had a hard time getting any information on these injuries. Like we keep asking, we ask in different ways. The Jalen thing, I have no idea if we should be worried about it or not. On one hand, John, like I get your point about just it's probably
I've
just a
heard
rest
there's no
thing.
concern on Jalen. I think
Yeah.
they're just making sure he's ready for later in the year.
Yeah, and there's no reason to force anything now. And Sam, I mean, 35 minutes tonight, that's not a guy that you're holding back. I would imagine the shooting is probably unrelated to the back. Like he has these games sometimes. That's the life of
Yeah.
a shooter. So I think
35
obviously,
minutes, I think you're good.
yeah.
Okay, so that's fine. So maybe it's just rest. And last thing before we wrap, speaking of the life of a shooter, and the only place Noah would have rather been tonight is potentially Maine.
I'm going to the
Long
Humboldt
Island.
next Friday.
Yeah.
I'll be
Oh,
there
they were
next
in Long
Friday.
Island last night.
Yeah.
So a couple of monster performances coming out of the Maine Red Claws. Are they still the Red Claws?
No.
Um,
No. The
I
Maine
wish they
Celtics.
were.
They're clearly not the Red Claws. Coming out of Maine, Baylor, he can play. Thank God. Honestly, I'm so thrilled at this line only because he looked like he couldn't play basketball at all. And I know it's the NBA, but like his shot looked like when I try to teach my daughter to like shoot from far out, and it's like she's heaving it at the basket. I'm like, all right, a little closer, like that's not going to make it
16% in the
there.
preseason.
How
And
old
he
is your
was
daughter,
just
John? Just so I can picture
she's old enough. She's old enough,
Okay.
but she's small. She's small. So when anything further back than the 3-point line is a bit of a shot put. Anything further back than the free throw line is a bit of a shot put right now. And that's what his shot looked like. Like he's just throwing it at the basket. Didn't look like anything normal. So he looked really off. I'm so happy to see him go, because that's what you want is like, go dominate down there. Remember how to play basketball, get your reps in, and then, eventually, hopefully get acclimated here. I'm not ruling out Baylor Scheierman potentially coming up here and being able to maybe take those Walsh minutes if Walsh doesn't own them, in the opportunity that he's given. And I honestly think that's what Celtics fans want to see. It's their first round pick in a little while, and with some sort of pedigree and the ability to score the basketball and do some other things and be a playmaker. I know Walsh has a higher defensive potential, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who'd be like, work your way into the mix, Rook. And so I'm
He's
like very
24.
encouraged. Yeah, very encouraged to see this here. Yeah.
There shouldn't be a major development trajectory with him. I think going to the G League, as you mentioned, John, is trying to get all these shots up, trying to play a little bit. We talked to Sam about that this morning too, and that's what he was going to tell him to do.
Go
is just
dominate.
Go out there
Yeah.
and dominate. Yeah. So I don't think he's going to be up there a ton. I did picture him being up there to acclimate to the defense and just get reps if he's not playing much. And I think that's going to be the deal. I talked to him the other day, and he said it's probably going to be a week-by-week thing. But when he's with Boston, and tonight actually might have been a good night for him to be with Boston. It was just the logistics and timing here, the Cornet going down. You'd like to see a peek at what he could look like with some other guys. But unfortunately, in that small window, in preseason, it just went so sideways, and he really wasn't out there with many of the regulars that he didn't stand a chance alongside Walsh's ascent to get involved right away here. So I'm bummed because this is where he could end up for a little while here, right? If he had a great preseason and did what Walsh did, he's probably part of the rotation right now. But instead it went the other way, and he looked a little too sped up out there. The concern, Noah, is the two things that made him fall to 30 of the defense and the athleticism. And you could probably work on those over the course of a full year if you were like fully in Maine. But that's going to be a problem for him whenever he gets in there at the NBA level, at least in year one, until he just gets acclimated to just how different this level is here. So I was high on him coming in. He has so many skills that make you think he could fit in right away here, but he's a little behind right now just in terms of the timing this season of getting involved.
Yeah, I'll disagree a little bit because I know that because he's 24, everybody's like, he's 24, he's 24, he is who he is. I think regardless of how old you are, you're making the leap from college where you were a dominant player to the NBA where there's a whole new system. And we already know and have heard from everybody how complex the system is. I think that this was kind of inevitable. He wasn't going to have a seamless transition on this team, just the way the things are constructed. There's no room for error. So I think he was going to spend some time in Maine, and to come in your first game when he hasn't really been practicing with the team that much either because he's been with Boston a lot, and to have this stat line, I haven't caught the game yet. Looking forward to at least catching some of it. But I think, you have to be encouraged and also recognize the fact that, like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I really think that him being 24 is not indicative of, like, this is who he is. I think at the end of the day, like, Jordan did have a year in Maine and has learned everything and has learned the system. And he's the much younger player, but he understands what they're doing. And I watched at one point today, I was like, Mamie and Jordan are in the game in the fourth quarter, like in important minutes. Those are two guys that were fully in Maine last year. So going up to Maine doesn't mean anything bad for these guys.
You're not wrong, Noah. That's any rookie. It doesn't matter. That first year is going to be a challenge, particularly if you're one picked a little bit lower in the draft. There's a reason you're picked lower, and that means regardless of your age, you probably aren't super ready. If you were super ready to step right in and be totally fine, you're probably going to be picked before 30.
Right.
It's really more, I just think, relative to others, with the understanding that every rookie is going to struggle. Being 24, fully physically developed and about as much of a man as he's going to be, gives you some edge over somebody coming in who's still growing into their body a little bit and dealing with bigger, stronger, faster people. I know he did a lot of work this offseason to get him. I mean, he literally looks like a different human than the guy that they drafted. So he's done some work, but I think he could benefit from another cycle of that, because if you're not super athletic, you got to go through that full NBA regimen of, well, how do I get my body fully right? And then, and then you can get there, after another year or so. So he, despite the age, he needs time. I think people thought from a maturity level, or just, he's kind of more fully baked than your average rookie based off of the fact that he's coming in at 24.
And his skill set too. He's got a pretty solid skill set. So
exactly. He has, he's not raw, right? He's not Drake May in his footwork. Like, he plays basketball the way he plays basketball, but he's got to kick it up a couple of notches to be able to, compete for regular NBA minutes.
And again, we didn't see enough of him to figure out what the issue is. Was it a confidence thing, just playing your first couple games of the preseason? Was he not able to keep up physically out there? Or is there just a ramp up level here in terms of fitting in with everybody? So I'm interested to see. Obviously, he's going to dominate down there just because I feel like skill wise, he's going to be a level above a lot of these guys. So I don't even know how beneficial it's going to be for him to just have these short stints. So that's like, it's not a concern. It's the 4A thing, John. Like, are you stuck between those two levels a little bit here if you're him? Because I only bring up the age because you're not going to put him there all year like you did Walsh and just have him develop. I think
that's why, like, the most flattering comparisons for Scheierman was a poor man's Luka. I mean, a very poor man's Luka, but in the sense of, like, he gets very poor, but like he gets very, but like, I understand the thinking of it being like, he gets the game and the flow, and he can use, he's limited physically, but that, he can understand angles and how to use his body, and he has good vision, and he's that kind of thing. That's the way he's going to succeed. He's not all of a sudden going to become a super athlete. He has to be able to knock down shots and just be able to play within his physical limitations. But you're right. There is, for some people, a cutoff where if your skills aren't way upper level, you might just not be a good enough athlete to play at this level. And that's just a fact. Some people are just literally iced out of this league simply because they just can't keep up with the guys around them. They might be better ball players, but they just doesn't matter. They're just, the other guys are just too good athletes to be able to compete with. So you'll have to see with him. You'll have to see. Nothing's guaranteed there.
I love this game. I hope it works out.
I hope so. Noah, anything else you want to add before we wrap this?
No, just JD had it look like JD had a good game too. JD Davison. He's
Another 30.
guy. Yeah.
Didn't he almost have a triple double or something?
Yeah, he had 20, 31, 12 assists, 8
I think
rebounds.
he's
Like,
Yeah, it's a ridiculous line. Yeah.
I think
Ridiculous,
he's
yeah.
working on getting a statue built up in Maine.
I will say, people up in Maine, they love him. Like when I've gone up there, people are like, he is a legend because this is his third year as a two-way player.
He is a
this
legend.
for him. And so I'm curious to see if there's a pathway forward for him. I know a lot of people don't believe in him. A lot of people are like, he's just not an NBA player. But there is a reason why they've now used their two-way on him 3 years in a row. Like they think there's something there. He dominates the G League. He totally controls the game. But yeah, there are some things with his shot, with his size that are going to make it hard for him to be in the NBA. But he's, everyone speaks super highly of him. All of his former coaches, in the G League, they've all said he's just a brilliant guy, really understands the game, just controls, good leader, all those things. So yeah, we'll see. But just wanted to give him a shout out. And I'll be in opening next weekend. I'm going to be in Maine for 2 games. So any questions you have on Maine, come to me. I'll answer your questions.
When Pritchard takes Drew's job, Davison can step into the Pritchard role. There's a path. There's a path, right? It might be a couple of years, but maybe. Yeah. Anyway, Celtics, as we said, squeak out a win that, even though was in doubt, felt like it might not have been in doubt because it's the Celtics and you just kind of thought they'd pull it out, and they did. We didn't talk about it much, but that ATO with Tatum coming through was just a masterful play there on that dunk. I know it's easy to joke about the tying shot, which is just a bad shot. And I hate that that's the play that they choose, but I understand the rationale behind it in a tie game. Try to end it with a jumper with 0 time left on the clock. But kudos to Joe for calling that. I thought that was just such a well executed play, and it wasn't even using a screen. It was on a 2-for-1 that always fails. 2-for-1s under 35 seconds. The Celtics are the worst team I've ever seen in my life. It just always results in 2 bad shots. And I was pre-mad prior to that play. Right. And the beauty of it wasn't even a screen. It was just straight speed, but the hesitation when the ball goes to Drew and people thinking maybe Tatum's going to pull up and get a handoff there, and he didn't. He just kept running in a straight line. Beautiful bounce pass, dunk, just a pretty play. I loved that. So gotta give flowers. We didn't give Joe any enough love for that, but that because it ended up not winning the game. But that was a terrific play. Awesome. And then he goes and commits a dumb foul on the other end, but a loose ball foul. But whatever, it is what it is.
I mean, a bunch of other stuff here, turning what was a pretty rough game all night long. You trailed the whole first half, trailed most of the second half into a win is pretty good, especially down 3 rotation, guys. You'll take it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Joe said it best post game. He said these are the kinds of games that we won last year, and that's what made us a good team. And these are the kinds of games we have to win this year. And it doesn't mean you have to kill everybody, but you have to win. And they won, and they did their job. So
they did.
You got to take it for that.
They did. And we said it earlier in the night. You almost take it for granted because you're so used to them winning, even when they are down players. But they were down a significant amount of players. Just a bit of a trap game sandwiched between Golden State and Milwaukee, which kind of bigger profile teams that they might be looking ahead, even though again the Bucks fell to 2-7 after getting smoked by the Knicks tonight. Things are not going well. Things went well for Rob Williams. We talked about it earlier. 13 points off the bench in 17 minutes, and he hit his first career 3-pointer, and it looked pretty like he's been doing it his whole life. So lots of love for Rob. We miss you, and I'd still like to get him a ring if we can. That's my guy. That's my guy. A charity ring.
Was he your Luke, John?
Oh my God.
He didn't want to trade him for Holiday.
That's not what I said. I said
I didn't know this about you, John. That's good to hear.
No, I said emotionally this one hurts, but you have to make that trade. No, are you kidding? I hate saying the first guy on. I was as early on the Rob bandwagon as you could possibly be. Screaming at Bobby for his,
before we had Luke versus Cato, we had Tice versus Rob.
And no, Tristan.
No, it was Tice.
It was Thompson.
Oh yeah, I did like.
And you were
Thompson
Tice,
first,
right?
but it turned-
I gotta go back and rewatch some of these shows just for
I was
just to understand the lore.
the whole thing with Williams, going back was Brad just refused to play him because he couldn't recognize it, and then he just, as the year went on, was like, oh yeah, we've been managing him, and we were like, lie, that's a lie. You just didn't realize how good he was, he just didn't get it. But
then
it was
they
like
traded Tice.
I was an early adopter of what I thought was Rob's transcendent ability of like I said, that's why we always talk about Kada as baby Rob. Kada can do high level, high ceiling things that might make up that not everyone, or certainly not no one on this team can do, that might make up for the things that he can't do. And that's what Rob's issue was. He'd get lost on defense, do sloppy shit, would drive Brad crazy. But the highs were so high. And obviously you saw it in that year pre-injury and that defense, the way it was with whatever. But I mean, my God, I was like, I want to adopt Rob. Like I if I could find a way to get him back here, I would.
I didn't even know this. That's good to know.
My Rob love knows no bounds, so unabashed. But anyway, good to see Rob back, and he looked good. He was getting up, he was moving. I hope he stays healthy, and I hope he finds himself a nice home for the stretch run, because he's going to make some contender very, very happy. But yeah, that's it. We are going to wrap it. We're back on Sunday. Bucks game, matinee. It's a 3:30 game. So look for us around 6 o'clock here. Also, anybody who's just hanging around on Sunday watching sports, Patriots play at 1. Very fun matchup between Drake May and Caleb Williams.
Which way are you going? You going past?
I mean, the Bears are an overall better team.
No, I mean, what show are you going to be on?
Maybe both.
All
We'll see. We'll see. But I will say that Drake May has been playing better than Caleb this year, even though he's been playing great. He's been playing great. So that'll be fun. But yeah, we're back on Sunday. Lots of stuff. Make sure you like, subscribe, and do all that good stuff. Check out Noah Dalzell writing on the Game for Celtics blog, Bobby Manning for CLNS Media. And that, I think, is all we have to say about that. Celtics again win. They beat the Nets to improve to 8-2, 108-104 in overtime. We will see you guys next time.
Wait, Amit's got an outro for us, I think.
No, he doesn't.
He said he was going to work on an outro.
He had a phenomenal game.
Phenomenal
Horford's out. I think it's an option.
That did not sound like a chair.
It was a freaking chair. It does sound like a chair.